think it's safe to say that we'd all want a Pokemon in real life. Some Pokemon would make great pets, some would be extremely useful, and some would absolutely suck, because they'd either be completely useless, or they'd probably kill you, sometimes even unintentionally. But which Pokemon would we not want in the real world, or wouldn't be any use of the most? Well, to try and narrow down to the worst of the worst, I've invited AlmightyMandals to help me out.
Hey guys, it's Mandals, and as much as I love Pokemon, there are definitely some ones that would suck to have in comparison to others. In real life, that is. Now, I say real life because that's the main criteria of this video, Pokemon that would be bad or useless to have in the real world, not so much the Pokemon world. So, for example, you won't be seeing any Mega Evolutions in this video because to Mega Evolve a Pokemon you need a Mega Stone, and unfortunately, those don't exist in real life. Unless that Pokemon is Rayquaza, but move tutors don't exist in the real world either. And even though there are a handful of Pokemon that we would never hope to have in real life, there are also a handful that we definitely would, and we'll be covering that topic over on my channel, so be sure to stop by after this video. Unless you've come from that video, but in that case, go watch it again. After this one, of course. So before we run on with the actual video, let's go through a list of Pokemon that we considered putting in the video, but just barely didn't make it.
Darkrai. Would you really want to live with a Pokemon that gave you nightmares literally all the time? Yeah, me neither.
Houndoom. We can see a lot of uses for this hellish hound, but considering if you're accidentally burned by it and the pain of the burn would never go away, probably not the best one to have.
Swanna. This missed out on the list because the requirements for this Pokemon being absolutely useless are very specific. Basically, if you live anywhere outside of London, you're fine. But pretty much most, if not all the swans that swim in the Thames, which is in London, are owned by the Queen. And since your Swanna won't come with any sort of license, it means that you wouldn't be able to have it. Unless of course you're the Queen, which I can guarantee you watching right now are not.
Eevee. Okay, obviously Eevee isn't a bad Pokemon to have in real life, hell, even I want one, but it gets a mention because technically Eevee's main use is to evolve. And unfortunately the requirements for Eevee's evolution, like evolution stones and rocks, don't exist in the real world. And before you tell this Eevee expert that you can evolve Eevee using the power of the sun or the moon, well, yeah, you can. The Pokemon universe's Sun and Moon. Pokemon Sun and Moon, no pun intended, was created by Arceus. And our real life Sun and Moon was created by Jesus. And last time I checked, Jesus wasn't a fan of evolution. So, no. Eevee in the real world can't evolve. Case closed.
And finally, the Pokemon that everyone expected to make the list, Yveltal. Now it's true, this is arguably the most dangerous creature in the Pokemon universe. Well, at least when it's about to die, that is. I mean, you could technically still ride around on it. Just, you know, take really good care of it. Plus its main use is to destroy stuff. And according to its dex entries, that's one thing that it's actually very good at. Meaning that technically it's not that useless at all. But anyway, let's finally get into the actual list of our top 10 worst/useless Pokemon to have in real life.
Number 10. Wishywashy. If I were to imagine some of the most popular Pokemon that someone else would want in real life, I'd expect quite a few powerful and strong Pokemon to be on the list. One Pokemon I don't see being a popular pick is the single weakest Pokemon in the entire game. Yes, it's even worse than Magikarp. Magikarp can at least apparently leap as tall as mountains, whereas Wishywashy... swim? That's it. This is something that literally any fish can do. In fact, if you own a fish in real life, then that's pretty much the equivalent of owning an actual Wishywashy, and we all know how useful fish are as pets. Now, I can see the comments coming in already. But Wishywashy has a school form, meaning it would be really useful. Well, gee, that'd be great if not for the fact that you would probably need hundreds of other Wishywashy to make its school form. And since Wishywashy don't exist in real life, having a Wishywashy in real life also means having the only Wishywashy in real life. So no school form, basically making this Pokemon completely useless and not one that you'd want. Although the main reason it's only number 10 and not any higher, apart from being harmless, it apparently tastes good. But asking for a Pokemon in real life just to eat, that's pretty messed up. Not gonna lie though, if I had a Wishywashy in real life, I'd probably eat it as well.
Number 9. Iggly Buff. I bet you didn't expect this one. What would be the harm of having a Pokemon as adorable as an Iggly Buff? Well, how about the fact that once it starts to bounce or even roll, it cannot stop bouncing and is apparently impossible to stop. Well, that's just great, isn't it? Iggly Buff is more or less the Pokemon equivalent of Flubber.
Weebo.
Yes, sir.
take a picture.
Okay, look this way. Smile!
Now on the bright side, Iggly Buff I doubt would really hurt anyone, considering it's only a couple of pounds, and it's even called the balloon Pokemon. But still, having a Pokemon that would never stop bouncing would be havoc. I guess to avoid this, before your Iggly Buff interacts with anything in any way, try your best to evolve it into a Jigglypuff, but then it would also put everyone near you to sleep. Well, in that case, evolve it once more into Wigglytuff, which you wouldn't be able to do because Moonstones don't exist in the real world. Who cares, you wouldn't be able to evolve it anyway. You can't feed it while it's bouncing. In fact, it will probably end up bouncing all the way out of orbit and die in space. Unless it can breathe in space, which wouldn't really matter because if it was in space, you definitely wouldn't be able to get it back. So for those reasons, Iggly Buff definitely is not a Pokemon that you'd want to have, as well as being more or less completely useless.
Number 8. Primate. Now we're at the part of the list where the Pokemon from here on out can cause physical harm. In Primate's case, it has quite the anger issue. This raging pig monkey is one of the last things you'd want as a pet. It'll attack you if it's upset, it'll attack you if you wake it up, hell, it even gets furious if someone just looks at it. It even gets angry if you run away from it. So basically, there's no pleasing this rage-induced Primate. The best thing you can do is give it bananas and hope it leaves you alone, while at the same time making sure you don't look at it while doing so. Or if you're really desperate, make it as angry as you can, because it's possible a Primate will become so angry it dies. Well, isn't that a useful ability to have? You know a Pokemon is bad when their best use is to get angry, which results in death if they get too angry.
Number 7. Voltorb and Electrode. You know what's worse than living with a Pokemon that's always angry? Living with a Pokemon that always has a chance to blow up in your face. The Pokédex loves to go on about how much of a destructive nuisance these things can be. They constantly zap and electrocute people, and as said before, explode. How frequently? Well, in Voltorb's case, anytime you touch it. And as for Electrode, pretty much whenever it wants. Now you may argue that they're technically a good source of electrical power, however pretty much every electric type is. And even then, these Pokemon feed on electricity, meaning that they're most likely going to cause power outs, taking more electricity than distributing it. I'd say that the best use for these ticking time bombs would be, well, just that. To try and use them as an actual bomb, which is near impossible considering how easy they are to detonate. They don't die after exploding, they just live and explode again later. Definitely not something you'd want to have in real life.
Number 6. Vanillite. Unless you absolutely love the blistering cold, and when I say blistering cold, I mean living in a blizzard every single day for the rest of your life. Going down the evolution line to Vanillite, just its breath comes to a temperature of negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit, which is funnily enough just slightly colder than the average temperature in Antarctica. Or exactly as cold as the average temperature as the coldest inhabited area in the world, being Omyaikin in Russia. As Vanillite evolves, we can only assume its breath is going to become colder and colder. So you can imagine the breath of a double-headed Vanillite to be much, much colder. So you'd want to try your best not to anger this living, breathing popsicle, because if both heads get angry, well, prepare for the snow day of a lifetime. Kids in the area definitely won't be going to school that day, because they'd be dead, buried under mountains of snow. You can't even use this thing as a proper ice cream. Considering that Vanillite's breath alone is as cold as the South Pole, taking a bite out of one of these things would probably be the equivalent of consuming liquid nitrogen, which would freeze your insides and even worse, cause your stomach to explode. So unless you live in extremely snowy areas where blizzards are usually expected and you don't mind being snowed in for the rest of your life, it'd be best not to have one of these things by your sides at all times.
Number 5. Honedge. A sword Pokemon would be great to have, right? Your own Pokemon pet, and personal weapon of defense at the same time. Unfortunately, that isn't the case with Honedge. If anyone dares grab its hilt, it wraps a blue cloth around that person's arm, and drains that person's life energy completely. Well, how wonderful. A sword you can't even wield without dying. Extremely useful. In fact, you most likely wouldn't even be able to wield a Honedge even if you wanted to, as it'll probably just latch onto you whenever it feels like it. So overall, Honedge is one sword that no one wants to be on either ends of, and makes it possibly the most inefficient weapon to have. I mean, it kills more with the hilt end compared to the blade end. That's one Pokemon you definitely wouldn't want to get your hands on. Or you could just wait until someone else takes it off your hands, I guess.
Number 4. Muck. What is unquestionably the most disgusting, putrid, vile Pokemon? Muck is definitely a no-brainer when it comes to Pokemon you definitely wouldn't want. Let's just start with the fact that it's so stinky. I mean, if people fainting at your stench alone isn't an automatic turnoff, then I don't know what is. It's also probably the least environmentally friendly Pokemon, as the fluids that seep from its body not only kill plant life, a single drop is enough to make a perfectly fine pool into basically a swamp. On top of this giant pile of shit, not only does anything that touches it get poisoned, but in order to actually take care of it, its diet consists of more or less everything that makes it up. Basically, anything disgusting. Now, we could have easily filled the list with extremely repulsive Pokemon, but we'd just be repeating ourselves if we did, so we picked the absolute most disgusting one to represent them all. Congrats, Muck. That achievement is probably not something to be proud of.
Number 3. Guzzlord. All the Ultra Beasts would be pretty life-threatening to have in real life, but when it comes to the most dangerous one, as well as the hardest to take care of, Guzzlord for us easily took the cake. And pretty much anything else that could get his tentacle mouth hands on. Let's first try to imagine how tiring it would be to take care of a Munchlax, with it being incredibly lazy and eating its own weight in food every single day. Well, now try to imagine that same Munchlax, but 9 times bigger, ate literally anything it came across, and more or less didn't stop eating. Like, you wouldn't be able to satisfy it. It'd eat your house, it would eat your car, it would eat your neighbor's house, it would eat your neighbor's car, it would eat your neighbor's neighbor's house, it would eat your neighbor's neighbor's car, your neighbor's neighbor's house. Okay, you get the picture. If you're unable to successfully feed a being that literally eats mountains of food, or in this case, literal mountains, then what's the probability of you being next on the menu? Honestly, Guzzlord could probably just eat the entire Earth if it wanted to, since it not only feasts on the land, but the sea as well. I wouldn't be surprised if the insides of this thing were bottomless, which it probably is since its droppings have never been found. Well, in that case, unlike most of the Pokemon and real life animals, you wouldn't have to pick up after it. That's one good thing about having a Guzzlord in real life, right?
Number 2. Gardevoir. Here we have one of the last Pokemon you'd expect to see on a worst or useless Pokemon to have in real life list. The biggest use of Gardevoir is its incredible loyalty and that it'll even give its own life to protect its trainer. Its power also seems to be at its fullest if its trainer is in danger, so what's the problem here? Well, the problem is that Gardevoir's idea of protecting its trainer is to create a small black hole, which is possibly the worst thing to create when trying to protect someone. And don't let the word small seem like it actually means anything in this case. If Gardevoir created a black hole that was just the size of a coin, it would not only rip apart and consume anything near it, but eventually eat up the entire planet as well. If your number one use is to protect someone and to prevent any harm, then this might make Gardevoir the absolute worst at its job. I mean, the only way I'd see Gardevoir being even worse at its job is if it killed everything right out of the Pokeball. But at the very least, you can use it before it starts trying to protect you. But for the sake of you and for the rest of the planet, it's best that Gardevoir is still fictional.
And our pick for the number 1 worst, least useful Pokemon to have in real life is... Macago. Macago's body temperature is around 18,000 degrees Fahrenheit, almost twice as hot as the surface of the sun. So basically, having a Macago in real life would look something like this.
Mag, time to go!
And those are 10 Pokemon that you definitely wouldn't want to have in real life because either they're extremely life-threatening or because they'd be more or less completely useless. Or even both. Also keep in mind that there are a lot of useless and dangerous Pokemon that we didn't mention, because we didn't want to have the list full of Pokemon that had the same reason as another Pokemon on the list, so we tried to mix the list up a bit, to make it more interesting. Also, thanks a lot to Mandals for helping me out today.
No problemo, and if you enjoyed the video, why not pop by my channel where we cover the exact opposite this time, 10 Pokemon that would be the best and or useful to have. This list may have changed your mind about having a Pokemon in real life, but if so, my list will definitely change your mind again.
If you didn't know, as of recording this, Mandals is within touching distance of 100,000 subscribers. So if you do enjoy his content, why not help him out a bit? I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and please leave a like if you did. Subscribe for more Pokemon videos in the future, and until next time, thanks so much for watching.